All right, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to Amateur Astronomers Incorporated, also known as AAI, for our weekly presentations. We make our home here at William Miller Sperry Observatory on the campus of Union College here in Cranford, New Jersey. The observatory is open to the public every Friday night from 7:30 to 10:30 p.m., and we give these presentations, as I said, at 8:30 every Friday night. You can find out more about us on our website, which is www.asterism, that's ASTERISM.org. You can find out about upcoming presentations and any special events we have. If you are a scout leader or youth group leader, you can find out how you can get scheduled for a program that would start at 7 o'clock on a Friday night for your group. And you can also find out how you can join us. Join the club by clicking on Join AAI, or if you'd like to give a donation, because we are a nonprofit organization. One nice piece of information about us that in 2024, the club is going to be celebrating 75 years as an amateur astronomy club. We started in 1949. I would like to also mention that you can follow us on our Facebook page, which is Amateur Astronomers Incorporated, and also on Instagram at amateur.astronomers.inc. Now, our presenter this evening is Dr. Clif Ashcraft. He's a member of AAI. He's been a long-time member of AAI. He actually has his own observatory, his own telescope and equipment. He's given a lot of presentations here at AAI, plus he's also done a lot of his own imaging that he shares with us. The title of his presentation is What's Up, a Down to Earth Sky Guide. And with that, Clif, you can begin.
Thank you, Mary. Well, I'm standing in for Kathy Vicari tonight, who usually gives the What's Up talk. And, there we go. Works with the mouse click. So the sky tonight is, if you go out at 10 p.m. tonight, after the twilight is faded from the sky, and if you look into the far west of the sky, you'll see Venus and Mars setting, and Arcturus overhead, as well as the summer triangle with Vega, Aquila, and Deneb. The summer triangle is just before the meridian overhead. We can turn off the light pollution very nicely in Stellarium, which I'm using to create these displays of the whole sky. And we can add the meridian, the north to south line in the sky, and the ecliptic, along which you will always find the moon and the planets. Here we have the constellations that are visible tonight, starting around 10 o'clock. And we can add the mythological figures that go with the constellations. So I'm going to go through an account of what constellations will be visible for the month of July, as well as some of the mythological basis for the constellations and some of the wonderful sights that you can see within the constellations, both naked eye, binocular, and with a telescope. I'll also discuss what you'll see if you get up tomorrow morning at 4 in the morning. You will see a waning gibbous moon right here in Aquarius. Saturn will be right on the meridian, and Jupiter will be in the towards the eastern horizon a bit, and Uranus will also be up. So we've got a lot to talk about tonight. One of the real attractions of the summertime is the summertime Milky Way. Now, this is a picture that I took from West Texas, not very far from McDonald Observatory, on a trip that a vacation that I took down there several years ago. It's prime time in July. The nucleus of the Milky Way galaxy is right here, as is visible in the bright star fields to the west of Sagittarius, just above the southern horizon. Here's the teapot of Sagittarius, and this is the heart of the Milky Way. It's bisected by the dark lane of dust, which is the Sagittarius spiral arm, lying between us and the nucleus containing our 4 million solar mass black hole, Sagittarius A star. By the way, by using cameras sensitive to the K band in the near infrared, that's around 2.2 microns, a group of astronomers led by Sasha Tripp have been able to see past the dust of the Sagittarius arm, as well as the bar containing the nucleus, and actually image a group of very rapidly moving stars in elliptical orbits around the central black hole, which is Sagittarius A star. You can see these very tight orbits, and at one of these is going so fast at when its closest approach to the black hole that it's going about 10% of the speed of light, which is quite an orbital velocity. The periods of these stars orbiting the black hole allowed the most precise estimate of the mass of the black hole to date of 4.3 billion times the mass of the sun. The researchers also managed to fine-tune the distance to Sagittarius A star, finding it to be 27,000 light years away. These are the authors of that paper that I read, with Sasha Tripp being the principal author. The constellation Leo is disappearing in the west around 10 o'clock. It represents the Nemean lion killed by Hercules as the first of his 12 labors. It's sinking into the west after sunset, perhaps because Hercules is near the meridian in July. I would run too. Leo is one of the most recognizable constellation figures and has been associated with the lion in many cultures besides the culture of the Greeks. Leo contains several bright double and multiple stars, including Regulus, a multiple star system, one pair of which is a wide double easily split in binoculars. Regulus A is a blue-white star of magnitude 1.34, and Regulus B is magnitude 7.7, and the separation is a wide 177 arc seconds. So it's easy to see Regulus with binoculars. And I don't know what Chewy's barking at. Presumably he'll figure it out. The galaxies in Leo, which were prominent in the spring, are much less prominent in July because of the longer twilight. It's fireworks at Great Adventure. That's what he's barking at. The next constellation that's prominent in July is Ursa Major. It's nearly overhead. This is the Great Bear, one of the most recognizable of all constellations, particularly the asterism composed of the 7 brightest stars known as the Big Dipper. This whole constellation seems to have been seen as a bear by most cultures. There's even a Native American story about how the bear lost his tail, since the real bears don't have one, although the one in the sky does. I think the story is about him sitting down on a frozen lake and leaving his tail drag in a hole in the ice, and it froze. And when he got up, his tail got pulled off. So that's how the real bears don't have a tail. The stars Alcor and Mizar in the bend in the handle of the Dipper are famous for being a test of good eyesight. They're a naked eye double star. Now, the brighter star, Mizar, is also a double, but you need a small telescope to resolve it. The pair of galaxies M81 and M82, known as Bode's Galaxy and the Cigar Galaxy, are located in the northern part of the constellation, with the diagonal line across the bowl of the Big Dipper pointing right at them. The more well-known pointers are Merak and Dubi. You can use those to find the North Star, which is off the screen at the top. The Pinwheel Galaxy M101 is also located above Alcade and Mizar. That's a very good way to find it. Just imagine a pyramid up here. And right there is M101. It's called the Pinwheel Galaxy, and it's home to a very interesting object. We just had a supernova that erupted on May 27th of this year. It got up to about 10th magnitude before it started fading. But this is a picture that I took of it by live stacking shortly after the discovery. I have been recently taking these pictures, which are much less impressive, but are very well exposed for doing photometry. I have a program that I put these apertures around the star and it calculates the brightness for me. I just read it off the screen. I've been accumulating the brightness of the supernova and a bunch of comparison stars. All these stars in this image, with the exception of the supernova, are relatively nearby stars in the Milky Way galaxy, and we know their magnitudes very well. So I'm comparing their brightness with that of the supernova and calculating its magnitude from that. And here's what it's been doing. And there's the measurement I took last night. It's down to a brightness of 12.2 magnitudes. And it'll keep in the sky for another few years. The next constellation I want to draw your attention to is Virgo. It is Virgo the Virgin, linked in Greek mythology to Nike, the Greek goddess of justice, and Persephone, the daughter of Demeter, the harvest goddess. According to Greek mythology, the earth experienced eternal spring until the god of the underworld abducted the spring maiden Persephone. Not nearly as recognizable as Ursa Major, Virgo does have the archetype first magnitude star Spica in her left hand, which is shown in the constellation figures as holding a bunch of harvested wheat. And here is the star Spica. Spica is a blue giant star about twice the size of our sun, but over 2,300 times as bright. Virgo contains the galaxy cluster with over 1,300 galaxies called the Virgo cluster, and it's the largest cluster in our local supercluster that's also named the Virgo supercluster. Especially noteworthy are the galaxies M87 up here. That's the one with a 6.5 billion solar mass black hole, and M104, the Sombrero Galaxy. Now, this constellation, which is nearly overhead tonight, is Bootes, the herdsman. Also, speaking of Spica, here is that arc coming from Ursa, from the bend of the handle of the Big Dipper down to Arcturus and on the way to finding Spica in Virgo. Bootes the herdsman can be seen driving the great plow, the Big Dipper, in a circle around the North Star. Polaris, along with his two trusted hunting dogs, which are represented by the constellation Canis Venatici on his right flank. Bootes also stands proudly next to three constellations, Hercules on his left and Corona Borealis Corona Berenices on his right. A simple way of finding the constellation is to look along the handle of the Big Dipper. The most notable deep sky object in Bootes is one that you cannot see, the Great Void. It's a region of space in the middle of the constellation Bootes that contains, it's devoid of almost anything. It's called the Great Void. If our Milky Way galaxy was in the middle of this Great Void, we would not have known there were any other galaxies in the universe until the 1960s, when telescopes became powerful enough to see the distant galaxies. That's why there's no Messier objects in Bootes. Charles Messier couldn't see anything there. Libra is an inconspicuous constellation of the zodiac. It's only got two stars of any significant brightness. Beta Librae, or Zubin Esh-Shibali, is actually brighter Then Alpha Librae, which is Zubid al-Ganubi. Now, there are 85 stars within the boundaries of Libra brighter than 6.5 magnitude, but we can't see any of them with the naked eye in New Jersey except Zubid al-Ganubi and Zubid al-Chimali. Libra was known in Babylonian astronomy as meaning the scales or balance, although it was also known as the claws of the scorpion. This used to be the figure of Scorpio, and its claws were well into what is now known as the constellation Libra. Libra is a relatively new constellation in that respect. The scales of the blind figure of justice representing our legal system is based upon the scales in Libra. Zubid al-Ganubi is a multiple star system divisible into two stars when seen through binoculars, and it is a blue-white star of magnitude 2.7. The secondary is a white star of magnitude 5.2 and spectral type F3b. Its traditional name, Zubid al-Ganubi, means the southern claw, which goes back to it formerly was in part of the constellation Scorpius. Zubid al-Akrab means the scorpion's claw. That's Gamma Librae right here. So a lot of reference to the scorpion in this constellation. Here is the modern declawed version of Scorpius. Here, Antares is closer to the head of the scorpion than the heart as it was in the old depiction. According to mythology, Scorpius is the scorpion that the earth goddess Gaia sent to attack and kill the hunter Orion. Remember Orion from the wintertime sky? The image of Scorpion was placed opposite to Orion's in the sky, so the two will never appear together in the sky at the same time. Scorpius contains many bright stars, including Antares, the rival of Mars, Beta Scorpio or Ashcraft, which is a triple star, Delta Scorpio, Dishriba is called the forehead. I guess that's the forehead of the scorpion. And there's a bunch more of them. Marking the tip of the scorpion's curved tail are Gamma Scorpio and Nu Scorpio. Those both of those names mean sting. And of course, that's where it is on the sting of the scorpion. They're also sometimes called cat's eyes because they're close together in the night sky. And omega 1 and omega 2, right up here, form a naked eye double, another good test for good eyes. Deep sky objects include several open star clusters, including M6, the Butterfly Cluster, M7, the Ptolemy Cluster, and NGC 6231. A couple of globular star clusters, M4 and NM80. And the planetary nebulae 6302, the Butterfly Nebula, and 6334, the Cat's Paw Nebula. Ophiuchus, the serpent handler, is depicted holding a large snake made up of two small constellations, Serpens Cauda, which is the tail, and Serpens Caput, which is the head. This is the figure of Ophiuchus here, and here's the head of the snake, and there's the tail of the snake. Early Greek legends had Apollo fighting the snake, but later Greek and Roman legends depicted Asclepius, the god of medicine, holding the snake. The caduceus, or the rod of Asclepius, is an ancient Greek symbol for medicine, and our doctors of today still use the caduceus on their lapel pins and the like. Here is a put together constellation of Orpheus and his snakes, or rather both ends of his snakes. And it contains a number of globular star clusters because it's well away from the Milky Way. And you can see the globulars, which show up best above and below the planes of the Milky Way galaxy. There's also a nebula with open star cluster, which is, let's see, where is M16? There it is, over in Serpens Cauda. This is called the Eagle Nebula, and it's got the famous pillars of creation in it. Here's the whole nebula, and you can see it sort of looks like an eagle. There's his wings on both sides. Here's his head, and his tail is back here. And of course, this beautiful picture taken by the Hubble Space Telescope is this famous picture called the Pillars of Creation. It's also got the recurrent nova RS Ophiuchi, which had an outburst on August 8th, 2021, the day that Stellafane closed down that year. I suppose that we would have all been watching it if it hadn't flared up the Sunday that we were all leaving. It's a recurrent nova where a large, late in its life red giant is feeding its mass onto a white dwarf, and occasionally enough hydrogen builds up that we have a big thermonuclear explosion, and the nova flares up, giving rise to all these emission lines of hydrogen, helium, and oxygen, and even iron in its emission spectrum. Hercules is next in the constellations. It's in mythology, Hercules is associated with the it's associated with the second to last labor of Hercules, which involved defeating the dragon Ladon, who guarded the garden of the Hesperides, where the golden apples were. He was supposed to gather those apples for, I think it was Zeus. They're shown upside down on star maps, but if you stand facing north and look straight up, you can see them locked into eternal combat, but right side up. There's the dragon, and here's Hercules, but it looks like he's fighting the Hydra at the same time. Busy guy. By the way, in case you don't know where you're going, it turns out to be in the direction of the left hand of Hercules. The sun and everything bound to it by gravity is traveling in an orbit around the center of the Milky Way at the velocity of 414,500 miles per hour, presently towards this point in the sky. Alpha Hercules, Rasalgethi, is a multiple star system. It's a visual double first discovered by Maskelyne in 1777 and later measured accurately by Struve and many other double star observers. There have been 513 measures of this to map its orbit. The theta value, the position angle, has gone from 117 degrees to 103 degrees over the course of the many years of observation. And the separation, or rho value, has narrowed from 9 arc seconds down to 4.7 arc seconds. The actual separation between the two components is 46 million miles, and the period of rotation is 3,600 years. The primary is a red giant, and the secondary is also a close double in an orbit of only 52 days. It's only recently been resolved by speckle interferometry with a very big telescope. Hercules contains 2 globular star clusters, M92 up here in the northern part, and the more famous one, M13, down along the side of the trapezoid. Beautiful contrast between these 2 stars adjacent to the globular star cluster at Hercules. Next constellation of the summer sky is Lyra, with the brilliant star Vega in it. The legend of Lyra tells the story of Orpheus, who was given a harp by the god Apollo. Orpheus' music was sweeter than that of any other mortal man. It could soothe the heart of any savage, bringing joy to the heart of the weary. It was even said that rivers changed course to stay near its beauty. Orpheus married the lovely maiden Eurydice, But after their wedding, as she walked with her bridesmaids, she was bitten by a snake and died. Orpheus was so stricken with grief that he journeyed to the underworld to win her return. His music not only gained him entry to Hades, but it caused Pluto, the god of the underworld, to soften his heart and grant Orpheus' wish to get his bride back. But there was a condition. Eurydice would follow Orpheus, who could not look back until both had gained the upper world. Orpheus followed his instructions until he reached the surface. Before Eurydice could take the final steps, he turned to gaze upon her, and she vanished with only one word to her love, farewell. Crazed with grief, Orpheus wandered the hills of Greece until he was murdered, and the Muses buried him, and Apollo placed his magical harp in the sky as the constellation Lyra. Lyra is easy to spot because of the presence of Lyra, Alpha Lyrae, also known as Vega. Close to zero magnitude, it's the fifth brightest star in the sky, a brilliant white star marking the 90-degree corner of the summer triangle, with Deneb and Altair forming the other two corners. It's fairly close to the solar system, only 25 light years away. It's twice the mass of the sun and will burn through its supply of hydrogen much quicker, lasting only about a billion years compared with the 10 billion year lifetime of our sun. It will exhaust its hydrogen, puff up into a red giant, blow off its atmosphere, creating a planetary nebula with a white dwarf in the middle, while our sun remains much as it is now on the main sequence of stellar evolution. Another amateur astronomer favorite in Lyra is the double double, Epsilon Lyrae, right up here to the west of Vega. If you have sharp eyes, you can see that it's a double star. And when you look at it with a telescope, you can see that each of the components, epsilon 1 and epsilon 2, is itself a close double star. Another favorite is the Ring Nebula in the more southern part of the constellation. It's a planetary nebula, probably a lot like the one that Vega will turn into when it reaches the end of the main sequence. M57 is 2,300 light years away. If it were as close as Vega is, you wouldn't need a telescope to see it. It would be 1/8 the diameter of the full moon. We also have another globular cluster in Lyra, M56, not as big as and famous as the cluster in Hercules, M13. Another stellar attraction in Lyra is Shelliac, Beta Lyrae, a contact double star, which is actually doing the same thing that Ares Ophiuchi is doing, but so far it has not put enough material on the compact source to make it go boom. Its estimated age is only 23 million years. It was once the more massive of the two stars, but due to its high mass, it was the first to evolve away from the main sequence. As it expanded and became a giant star, it's gradually transferred most of its mass to Beta Lyrae A2 at the rate of about 2 times 10 to the 5th solar masses per year. This is what it looks like. It's a contact double star with this one losing its mass to this other star. I'm convinced that one day it will go nova. This is the spectrum you see with the bright emission lines. It's a lot like the spectrum of the nova Ares Ophiuchi. Now, the constellation Cygnus. Myths related to Cygnus is that the first one is that it was placed in the sky as a monument to his own trickery by Zeus. Spartan queen Leda gave birth to 2 sets of twins, the immortal Pollux and Helen, the Helen of Troy, and the mortal Castor and Clytemnestra. After being seduced by the god Zeus, who had transformed himself into a swan to sneak up on her. The immortal children were fathered by the god, and the immortal ones by Lena's husband, King Tyndareus. And I don't know how you work that out, but supposedly that's what the Greeks believe. Cygnus is also sometimes identified as Orpheus, the Greek tragic hero who met his end at the hands of the Thracian Maenads for not honoring Dionysus. After his passing, Orpheus was transformed into a swan and placed next to his lyre in the sky. Cygnus is also sometimes associated with Cycnus, the son of Ares, who met his end after challenging Hercules to a duel. Lots of stories these Greeks had. Interesting objects in Cygnus include Alberio, Beta Cygnus. It's a beautiful double star, easily resolved in small telescopes. The primary is a very close double composed of a type K2 star and a B8 star, the combination having a gold color. The secondary is a type B star with a blue, almost purple color. It's possible that it's not really a physical binary, but merely lined up so that it looks like a binary. Also in Cygnus is the supernova remnant, the Veil Nebula, with NGC 6960, the Western Veil, called the Witch's Broom, and NGC 6992, the Eastern Veil. It's a very large object and difficult to photograph the whole thing at once unless you have a short focal length telescope. Also in Cygnus is the planetary nebula NGC 6826, called the Blinking Nebula, because you sometimes see it and sometimes don't, depending on your averted vision. Another planetary nebula, 6888, the Crescent Nebula, and an emission nebula, IC 5146, which is the Cocoon Nebula. It's way over here in that part of Cygnus. In mythology, Aquila the eagle represents the bird who carried the thunderbolts Zeus used to smite his enemies with. I wonder if the tiny constellation Sagitta up here is actually one of Zeus's thunderbolts. Three interesting planetary nebulae are found in Aquila, NGC 6804 and NGC 6781 and NGC 6751, the Cat's Eye Nebula. The star Altair Alpha Aquilae is one of the three stars in the Summer Triangle and one of the closest visible stars to our solar system. It's only 17 light years away. It's a main sequence star of type A and about 1.8 times the mass of the sun, but it's 11 times as bright. And it rotates extremely rapidly to the point that it's an oblate spheroid, sort of a sat-on basketball. Gamma Aquilae turns out to be the star, this one right here, toward which Pioneer 11 is headed. It will get there in about 4 million years. Sagittarius, located near the horizon to the south, in Greek mythology is commonly thought to represent a centaur, a warlike creature with the torso of a man and the body of a horse. Sagittarius is often associated with Crotus, the son of Pan, the goat god, and Eupheme, the muse's nurse. It's commonly known by an asterism within the constellation called the teapot, and it certainly looks like a teapot. It even seems to have steam coming out of its spot, going up through the star clouds of the Milky Way and into Scutum up above it. Nebulae within the constellation Sagittarius includes the M8, the Lagoon Emission Nebulae, M17, the Omega Nebula, M20, the Trifid Emission Nebula, and NGC 65337, the red spider planetary nebula. And also NGC 655 an active star-forming nebula, a lot like the Orion Nebula. And Aquarius, I think this is the last constellation on our list today, was identified as the Great One in the Babylonian star catalogs and represents the god Ea himself, who is commonly depicted holding an overflowing vase. The Babylonian star figure appears on entitlement stones and cylinder seals from the second millennium BC. The winter solstice was located in this constellation in the early Bronze Age. You know, it moves because of precession. In old Babylonian astronomy, Ea was the ruler of the southernmost quarter of the sun's path, which was called the Way of Ea, corresponding to the period 45 days on either side of the winter solstice. Aquarius was also associated with the destructive floods that the Babylonians regularly experienced and thus was negatively connoted. In ancient Egypt, it was associated with the annual flood of the Nile. The banks were said to flood when Aquarius put his jar into the winter, beginning spring. So it was a good thing for the Egyptians. In Greek mythology, Aquarius is sometimes associated with Deucalion, the son of Prometheus, who built a ship with his wife Pyrrha to survive an imminent flood. They sailed for 9 days before washing ashore on Mount Parnassus. Sounds like another story from another mythology. Aquarius is also sometimes identified with beautiful Ganymede, the son of the Trojan king Tros, who was taken to Mount Olympus by Zeus to act as cupbearer to the gods, sort of a celestial water boy. Nearby constellations, Aquila represents the eagle under Zeus' command that kidnapped the young boy. Some versions of the myth indicate that the eagle was in fact Zeus transformed, and another version of the tale recounts Ganymede's kidnapping by the goddess of the dawn, Eos, motivated by her affection for the young man. Zeus then stole him and took him to Olympus to be the cupbearer. Saturn will reside in Aquarius for the rest of the year. It's presently near the star Sigma Aquarii, near the waning gibbous moon. That's where you'll see it at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning. Deep sky objects in Aquarius, because it's pretty far away from the galactic plane, the majority of the deep sky objects in Aquarius are galaxies, globular clusters, and relatively nearby planetary nebulae. Aquarius contains 3 objects in the Messier catalog: the globular clusters M2, M72, and the asterism M73, which was originally classified as an open star cluster, but the stars aren't close enough to be considered a star cluster by modern standards. But it's still on Messier's list of annoying fuzzy objects. 2 planetary nebulae are also located in Aquarius: the Saturn Nebula, NGC 7009, to the southeast of I guess that's Bu Aquarii. Yeah, forget my Greek letters. And the famous Helix Nebula, NGC 7293, which is southwest of Delta Aquarii, and not too far from the moon in the morning. Here's a picture of the Helix Nebula, and here's a picture of the Saturn Nebula, 7009. The planets in July are putting on 2 shows for us: the evening show and the morning show, with not much going on in between. Mars and Venus are in the west after sunset throughout July. The pair moved closer during June, and they began in July appearing quite close to each other, but now they begin to part company. They are both trending lower as the month goes on, with Venus in particular being noticeably lower each night. It's swinging around, getting very close to the Earth, and will soon get too close to the sun for us to see it. During the second week of July, reddish Mars will be very close to blue-white Regulus. Mars is pretty far from the Earth now, being left behind as the swifter Earth leaves it in the dust. Mars will be 2.25 astronomical units away, only 4.2 arc seconds across, and only 1.7 magnitude, about the same brightness as Regulus. The color contrast will be interesting to the naked eye, especially with binoculars, and particularly on July 9th and 10th when they are closest together. On July 20 to 21, the moon passes above Mars, Regulus, and Venus. And near the end of the month, in the second half of July, Mars comes into view and passes within 5 arc minutes of Regulus on July 28th. Should be a very interesting view through binoculars or a low power telescope, and a really good way to see Mercury. Most of us have never seen Mercury. I've seen it. I seen it several times and imaged it, but it's hard to find. It's not very bright, and it's very low on the horizon. But you can see it because it's right next to Regulus on July 28th. Should be visible through binoculars or a low power telescope. And the morning show. Jupiter and Saturn become prominent in the late night, early morning hours of July, particularly for those with a good eastern horizon. Saturn appears above the waning gibbous moon as it rises in Aquarius around midnight tonight, and it will be near the meridian in the wee hours of the morning. It'll be about 35 degrees above the horizon, and if I am lucky, in the gap between a couple of trees obstructing my southern horizon, I might get my first Saturn image of the year if those clouds go away. Chase those clouds away, Chewy. He's still barking at great adventure. Anyway, Jupiter will be well above the horizon by dawn and a good position for our planetary imagers who have a decent southeast horizon. It will appear beneath the crescent moon on the morning of July 11th. Jupiter is considerably brighter than Saturn in the sky. It's both bigger and closer to the Earth, and it's much closer to the Sun than Saturn is, all controlled by the inverse square law of electromagnetic radiation. Saturn cruises across the sky in July with Fomalhaut, a dusty young star. Fomalhaut is only around 440 million years old, an upstart compared with our sun's age of 5 million years. The James Webb Space Telescope recently revealed new details of the dusty debris disk around the star, showing much more structure than had been revealed by the Hubble Space Telescope. There are 3 distinct belts made up of debris from collisions. The gaps between the rings are presumably carved out by unseen planets orbiting the young star. Supermoon on July 3rd, the buck moon, we missed it, almost but not quite, the blue moon on August 1. So we won't have 2 full moons in August, so no blue moon in July. An event we missed last month because of clouds and rain was the near-Earth asteroid 2023 MU2. It was discovered on June 16th by Gennady Borisov, an amateur astronomer in Crimea, and it was confirmed by the IAU Minor Planet Center on July 22nd, and it passed between the Earth and the Moon on June 26th. It was discovered just before it passed the Earth. The closest approach was only 134,000 miles. It was only, 13 to 29 feet in diameter. It was comparable in size to the asteroid that hit Chelyabinsk, Russia in 2013. It would have made quite a display if it had entered our atmosphere. It was about 20th magnitude, the closest approach. It's 22nd magnitude now. Here's the ephemeris of the planet, and this shows the orbit of it. It's this yellow ellipse, and it passed very close to the Earth on the 26th. The Virtual Telescope project allowed us to see this online. This telescope is in Tuscany, Italy, and it's tracking the asteroid during the closest approach. And these are stars that are trailing because the telescope is not tracking the stars, it's tracking the asteroid. And by the way, we can do this too. Thanks to Jim Nordhausen's rebuild of the 24S telescope drive, it's now a virtual paramount. He has, it's indistinguishable to the SkyX program from a paramount mounting, and we can input orbital elements of any solar system object and go to and track it. Should be an interesting project if we would want to learn how to do that. Exoplanets. The James Webb has observed a transit of the super Earth GJ 486 orbiting a red dwarf star 26 light years away. It has 3 times the mass of the Earth and 1.3 times the diameter. The density is 1.36 times that of the Earth, or about 1.7 grams per cc, probably indicating an iron core and a rocky planet. The surface gravity would be 1.8 G, almost twice as the Earth. The surface temperature is a scorching 800 Fahrenheit, since it orbits very close to the red dwarf. Its year is only 1.5 days long. The purpose of the James Webb observation was to detect the composition of any atmosphere around the planet by observing the difference between the spectra of the star during the transit and that of the star with no transit occurring. It was consistent with an atmosphere containing 10% water vapor. It was also with there being significant water vapor in the cooler spots of the sunspots on the red dwarf. So that's still up in the air. By the way, I also learned a lesson to not trust space.com very much in reading about space news versus reading the original publication by the real astronomers. Space.com said the exoplanet had less than 1/3 the radius of the Earth. If this were true, the density would have been 111 grams per cc, and compared that with 19.25 for tungsten, the heaviest element we got our hands on. It's impossible unless GJ 486 had a core of neutronium. So don't trust everything you read on SpaceX. The moral of the story, go to the source. There's the link to the source to read more about it. That's all for tonight. Acknowledgements, Kathy Vicari, who usually gives this. I basically just follow her outline and plug in the stuff for the month. Credits to Stellarium Online, Wikipedia, and Sky and Telescope for all the nice constellation diagrams. The Washington's Double Stars catalog for the information about that double star. Astronomy Magazine, NASA, ESA, and again, Wikipedia. Questions, anyone?
First of all, thanks, Cliff. Let's start with anybody here in the observatory. Does anybody have any questions? I can see you if you want to raise your hand. Yes, go ahead, in the back. Does he have a question? Whose dog is barking?
That's my dog, Chewbacca, and he's very aggressively barking at the fireworks display at Great Adventure, which is only a few miles away. He's wanting to keep those bad things away from us. He's not frightened. He's just trying to do his job of keeping danger away from the household. That's Chewbacca. Good dog.
Before we go online, does anybody else here in the observatory have any questions? Okay, how about anybody online? Do you want to unmute yourself? I don't think so. I guess we don't have any other questions, Cliff, but thank you very much. A lot of information about all the constellations and a lot of the Greek mythology thrown in. That's very interesting to hear about how all these constellations and the stars and whatever got named. I just want to remind everybody that we're here every Friday night from 7:30 to 10:30. And next week, our presentation will be by AAI member Matt Swatsky. And the title of his presentation is Deep Space and Deep Learning. And just also reminding all the members and the public too, our next monthly meeting won't be until September 15th. So I want to thank everyone once again for joining us tonight and wishing everyone clear skies.